Hi, it's Lee and welcome to the Tesla Economist. According to Toyota, there is no demand for EVs. And you know what? I'm inclined to agree with them. Sure, there were some extreme environmentalists in the early days who even bought Toyota Prius hybrids and eventually a Leaf when they were fully electric, but this was a small market. They didn't buy these vehicles for a better driving experience. Although these basic electric cars did come with a few advantages like lower costs of ownership, although cost of fuel is relatively cheap in the US anyway, and if you had a small Toyota, it wasn't exactly breaking the bank every time you filled up. Besides, it's SUVs, crossovers, and pickup trucks that most people wanted, not a small sedan. Sure, the other advantages were the fact they don't smell or create emissions, but it didn't seem to be enough to deter people from buying ICE. EVs were basic. But I think these few advantages are outweighed by the disadvantage of the much higher price tag when compared to a regular equivalent ICE vehicle. Even though in the long run the EV may cost less, it doesn't appear to have a major impact on the buying decision currently. And you might say, well, this will change soon when there's a $7,500 tax credit. Well, no, it won't, because all these EVs already have a $7,500 tax credit, except for GM and Tesla. Even the more luxury brand BMW was quite early to the game with their BMW i3, but it ended up looking like the worst BMW ever made since their bubble car. They didn't want to make a cool EV. They just decided to make one and test the market. That vehicle supposedly still makes a loss today. Of course, the BMW i8 did look cool, but that was a plug-in hybrid. Oh, and the price was far too high for any mass market. I did admittedly actually really want one of those when they first came out, being an ex-BMW enthusiast myself. And then there was Tesla. And as the infamous Tesla shorter Jim Chanos said back in the day, Tesla made EVs sexy. A very apt sentence, considering they did end up literally making them sexy, S3XY, with their model lineup. The inference was now, Tesla have done that, and shown that EVs aren't just for environmentalists. Now, the big boys, as he put it, will come out with vastly superior EVs to Tesla, as they're actually experienced in making millions of cars, with decades and decades of experience, unlike some little startup like Tesla at the time. So Legacy went to work and came up with their versions of electric. As a Tesla shareholder, I was somewhat concerned, but I figured at least Tesla was early enough to the market. They should at least secure some decent market share, and perhaps be one of the major auto players. But often in new industries like this, it isn't always the first player that ends up winning. Then as time went on, the legacy autos slowly started releasing models. The Porsche Mission E was creating a lot of excitement as it debuted in 2015, and we somewhat expected it in production soon enough after that. A vehicle to go head to head with the Model S. I actually saw one of the prototypes in the Porsche factory. I really did research this industry and company as best I could even back then. And hey, I can admit it, it was a nice looking car. It was really cool. But it wasn't released until the end of 2019 as the Porsche Taycan. I even have a friend who bought one, and another friend whose dad bought the Turbo S version, for lack of better word. Porsche worked really hard and managed to get the acceleration to compete with the Model S ludicrous. Of course, they did this by sacrificing range, by making the car that much more powerful. With a 0 to 60 time of 2.4 seconds, the range ended up being about 225 miles, compared to the Tesla Ludicrous, which at the time had 380 miles, not too far off double the range. And if you thought that was bad, the price was just as bad at around $185,000, or probably well over $200,000 when you include many of the standard options that come with a Tesla, which of course don't include autopilot or FSD. Oh, and there's probably a strong chance that Porsche even lose money on those cars. The most highly anticipated EV to compete with Tesla, and it managed to get the same acceleration, yet with about half the range, and at twice the price. Sure, all the Tesla haters and Porsche lovers didn't care, and they said how much better it looked than a Tesla that was now 7 years old, but that was all moot. It's the specs that matter. It was an eye-opener. If one of the biggest auto manufacturers in the world can only come up with this, over many years of refining it, oh, and having to buy out a massive stake in the electric sports car company Rimac for their powertrain technology, well, I couldn't believe it. It wasn't necessary that Porsche or Volkswagen were that bad. It just showed a clear indication of just how amazing Tesla were. And Porsche has created a small niche market for people with too much money who still want to be seen in a Porsche, but now wanted an electric car. And as they're so niche, there is perhaps enough of a market for them, just like Tesla also started in an exclusive niche with their Roadster. But as for the rest, simply making cars electric is not really enough. Teslas were popular because of all the insane technology you get. It really is the difference between a smartphone and a flip phone. Who wants to go back? Oh, and Teslas also drive that much better, even the standard ranges too. My wife has a standard Model 3, and I was amazed how well it drove even compared to my performance, with LFP cells too. Tesla wasn't offering just a cool, fast electric car that drives better. They offered a digital, smart, robot car that keeps improving with every latest update. They redesigned the car from electric up, utilizing all the best ways of improving handling, safety, and the overall driving experience with these new opportunities. And now all the other legacy autos are just trying to offer EVs. They're working very hard to show them off and create the effect of how electric they are, but rather than creating a smart car of their own, they're instead showing off with other features like lots of lights. People condition lighting with electricity, so let's make lots of lights, and lots of screens. But these vehicles come at a massive cost, both to the manufacturer and to the consumer, and they'll still lose money, and their specs don't come close to Tesla's. Legacy autos have still not understood the electric market, or how to tackle it. I'm not even sure they're trying to make smart cars or anything close to that. I think they're just trying to do what they can, and hoping for the best. Of course, even if their best was actually something consumers wanted, and actually made a profit, well, they're still left with that old issue of the fact they can't make them fast enough, as they can't achieve volume production. Oh, and then if they did ever manage that, then they're left with the other issue, which is lack of batteries. Hence all their massive hundreds of billions of dollars being invested into cell and battery factories that will be enough cells to make a few million EVs a year. Yes, just a few million. Tesla alone will hit that run rate sometime next year. They are all lost in this industry. However, I think Ford have actually been trying. First they attempted the Mach-E, going for the crossover market, a very popular market, and they even used their best brand, the Mustang, because they were so desperate. Not that this has anything to do with any Mustang in the past, but they had to give it everything they got. And they even managed to get to offer a 300-mile range, which is not an easy task. They even tried to cut costs by producing them in Mexico, but these efforts were still not enough. So their next plan was to make an electric version of their best-selling model, the F-150, although it does risk some serious cannibalization of what is pretty much the only profitable model Ford still make. And they really did everything they could think of to try and get this right. So it may have a chance against the almighty Cybertruck. Like Porsche, they niched. They went for the workman's truck, and rather than just placing more lights and screens everywhere, they thought massively about utility. They know their market and end user very well. So they designed an EV around utility for the likes of people like builders. One major feature was their massive frunk, a lockable storage unit on a pickup truck, a very useful feature that other trucks cannot offer so easily, and they made it the biggest frunk in the world. And you've probably seen there are a plethora of other really neat features that actually do offer genuine value to a lot of people. These features were not able to be offered on a traditional ICE truck, but electric made these possible. And next, they'll likely think of some utility for an electric van. But after thinking of several work-type vehicles useful to only a select target market, where do they go next? Do they offer some sort of SUV for soccer mums? What sort of unique useful features can they add there now it's electric? I'm not sure. So I think if these other EVs want to have some demand over a Tesla, they need to find their niches. There are lots of advantages now we can get from electric, like amazing acceleration and performance, a high energy capacity that could be used for alternative utility. Tesla are going to make all the mainstream EVs. The rest of them will have to just make some sort of lifestyle or work-related niche vehicles. Rivian and Lucid have niched. Rivian is a lifestyle vehicle and Lucid is opulent. However, they're not likely to be profitable before they run out of capital, but they didn't make the mistake of going head-to-head with Tesla and simply offering a higher-priced, lower-spec vehicle that makes less profit. Oh, and there is the reluctant consumer who doesn't want a Tesla because they don't like the brand or CEO, so they bought a Hyundai instead. Well, that's kind of like cutting off your nose to spite your face. You're paying a lot more for a lot less, and literally have more chance of a serious accident even. Of course, this runs into other issues. If they're just catering to small markets that have low demand, then the prices will end up having to be high for these vehicles, as they won't hit economies of scale. Also, just as they're getting started into the EV industry, it'll be over pretty quick. Consumers will move on fast to the next industry, the autonomous vehicles industry. And if Legacy thought building an EV was difficult, well, they haven't seen anything yet. FSD is the hardest thing ever created and will offer the biggest improvement in standard of living that we've seen for some time. But these companies are never going to achieve it, not at least without $100,000 of equipment per vehicle and an entire city mapped out. Oh, and they'll drive slowly and be more dangerous and get lots of driving wrong. It's immoral that these companies are even trying. BMW just had a fatality with their FSD attempt. Tesla has just about cracked it, and even to this date has the most superior version of FSD by orders of magnitude. Tesla are offering Legacy and everyone else a lifeline to take them up on their FSD. And like I said, it is totally unethical that these other companies don't take Tesla up on that, as it will literally save lives. Yes, some people do buy things like the Hyundai Ioniq 5. I had a friend who bought the performance version of that recently. I think he was a bit shocked though, just how much faster my Tesla was than his. Some consumers simply think they know better, but I'm sure in the long run, they'll all end up with buyer's remorse. Therefore, there really isn't that much demand for electric. It's Teslas that the market want. Thanks for listening. Please hit the thumbs up and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter and talk to me on Patreon.